Okay, looks like it's slowed down. So welcome. It's exciting to see everyone logging on here. Thank you for taking the time today to join. I would just like to start by doing our opening land acknowledgement. And so I'd like to recognize that the SDSN Canada Secretariat operates from Waterloo, Ontario at the University of Waterloo, which is situated on the Haldimand Tract, which is land promised to the Haudenosaunee of the Six Nations of the Grand River, and is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. And I'd like to acknowledge also with respect the different histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples of this country as we're all coming together from different parts of the country. And acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples. So I invite each of you to reflect on where your feet are planted and explore who shares that land base, its colonial history, and what transformative acts through the SDGs can be achieved over the coming decade towards reconciliation and justice. If you feel so inclined, please feel free to, in the chat, just put your name and affiliation, or in your Zoom name as well. You can change it to your affiliation so others can know who's on the call. So welcome everyone to the SDSN Canada 2022 annual members meeting. I'm John Beal. I think many of you probably know me. I'm the manager for SDSN Canada. And today it's it's a chance for us to convene the membership across the country to connect with each other, talk about emerging ideas and opportunities that the Network Secretariat is tracking. And we're pleased to have Dr. Amber Webb from the SDG Academy join us to talk about the Academy's role on accelerating education for the SDGs around the world. And they offer such wonderful resources from which we can all benefit as members of this global SDSN. We'll also have a lightning round of member initiatives where we'll hear just a small portion of some of the different amazing work happening across the country on the SDGs within SDSN Canada. And as with all online meetings, there are some Zoom logistics just to be aware of. Just we're all professional Zoomers at this point, but just please make sure your microphone is muted when you're not speaking. And if you'd like to raise your hand to be called on to speak or ask a question, you can do so in the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. And the chat function will be actively monitored as well. So if you have a question or you want to share thoughts or comments, but don't want to raise your hand to do so, please feel free to use the chat. And as you've seen coming into the meeting, the meeting's recorded and will be available with notes to all the members afterwards. So I'd like to just take a quick moment also to introduce kind of the team, the SDSN Canada team. Many of you know Dr. Jean Andre as our chair. We also have an announcement to say that Jean is retiring at the end of this month. And so we have a new incoming chair in Dr. Bruce Frayne, who's been on the Waterloo host committee and will take on the chair role starting in early July. So exciting for that. We'll hear from Jean and Bruce shortly. We also have other committee members here. I see Brock Dickinson, who chaired our meeting last year. And I'm just doing a quick scan. I think that's it from our committee. But we also have some new staff members who I'm really excited to introduce. So the first is Morenike Ojurongbe. She's the new SDSN Canada program coordinator. So she's been working on a few of our different files, which has been really fantastic. As we see the need on the SDGs grow, it's really nice to be able to dive deep and provide good work on that through Morenike's work. So she's about 5 months in now. And then we also have Jacqueline Willette, who started as our new communications coordinator on a part-time basis. And so if you've been seeing kind of a flurry of SDSN Canada social media, Jacqueline is the brains behind that. And so, as in the past, we're really wanting to do a push to the broader SDG community in Canada around the good work happening in the post-secondary sector on the SDGs. So we'll mention that a little bit later on as well, but looking forward to having Jacqueline join the team, and it's just been a few weeks now, or maybe almost a month even. So with that, I want to start our meeting today just with a series of breakout rooms, just a chance for everyone to meet somebody new. And for the next 20 minutes or so, it's just informal kind of, introduce yourself, your affiliation, if you want to talk about some of the SDG work that that you're currently working on or are planning or thinking about. It's meant to kind of harness the network element of what we're trying to do here. So no fixed agenda. Please feel free to be open to share with your other SDSN colleagues. So I'll just set some breakout rooms now, and we'll kind of do that for the next 15 or 20 minutes. So just bear with me as I set that up. And I'll try and set it here so that if you're in a room and you kind of met everybody before, and that you have the opportunity to shift to change rooms on your own as well. So let's see how this works. Again, and welcome back. So I'm pleased now that we can move on to a little bit of a network update. I hope that everyone made some new connections in that networking break. It's really interesting. You never know how it will go or what will come from it, but we have had formal partnerships established from our, I believe it was last year's or in 2020 meeting, and for the CROD summer school with Acadia and Concordia as well. So really interesting to see how different kind of partnerships develop and kind of that relationship build. And that's really what we're hoping to do more of with the network, is how do we connect like-minded folks in the post-secondary sector from across the country to share and learn and inspire. So now I'll invite our SDSN Canada Chair, Dr. Jean Andre. As I mentioned, Jean is retiring at the end of this month, and so this will be her last hurrah in terms of the SDSN for now. Anyways, we'll see if we can rope her in to stay involved. But and I mentioned Dr. Bruce Frayne will be taking on the role as Dean of Environment at Waterloo, as well as the chair. So I will pass it over to Jean for some remarks, and Bruce as well will kind of come in towards the latter half, I believe. So
thanks, John, and it's really nice to be with you here today. And I wanted to just sort of say that it's a time for me to be a bit reflective. And 1987, when Our Common Future came out, I remember the buzz about that. And some of you, are too young to perhaps remember the buzz, but I can't help but think about how the way we talk about change and the links between environment, society, and economy, about just how far we've come. Of course, the challenges are accelerating in many ways because of all kinds of things coming together, the way our technology is evolving and population and lots of things. But still, it sort of leaves me with a feeling of hope. Still, there's so much to do, and the university sector is such an important role to play, partly because we help shape the next generation, but also because of the way we do research and we mobilize knowledge and we transfer knowledge. And so SDSN Canada, I think, is and SDSN globally I think they're really important, and they're not the only ones doing this, but I think the size and I think the central leadership that we have, and then the strong engagement, I think, is exciting. So, one of the things I've been doing over the last few weeks is I'm cleaning out files, and you can imagine that all the files from the last 2 years are digital because of COVID. But prior to that, I did have some paper files, and one of the paper files that I found just yesterday was about the launch of SDSN Canada 4 years ago. And I don't know if a few of you, I think, were involved with it. I know, Amber, you've already mentioned that. But, the image that resonates with me the most is when we had students from all different universities and colleges in Canada, walking up with one of the SDG signs and talking about why it is they stand with that SDG. And I remember thinking how powerful that was. And in some ways, it seems like a long time ago, but 4 years isn't that long. And we now have 61 members, and lots of them, of course, represent individual universities or colleges or parts thereof. But there are also other organizations like Colleges and Institutes Canada and also Universities Canada, and then other research kinds of groups, think tank types of organizations. So it's such a nice mix. And Jeffrey Sachs launched that event with a keynote address as well. And many of you, of course, know of Jeffrey Sachs, but this week, I think we all learned that he received the Tang Prize for Sustainable Development. And again, it just is a sign that this community that we've created with SDSN is continuing to sort of mobilize things and receiving recognition for it, which is so nice. John and I were talking a bit about what might be useful in some opening remarks, and so I got 4 things I just wanted to sort of say. One of them was the growth about SDSN Canada, which I've commented on, but a few of the other things I wanted to sort of do, which is more environmental scan. Some are good and some not so good. I mean, I think on the good side, we see really strong movement for the SDGs across the post-secondary sector in Canada. Times higher education rankings are being impetus for this. Many of our organizations are now reporting data, watching how we fare with respect to one another as all of us report more or more carefully. It's a kind of a good competition to have, because there's nobody who loses as we all work harder on these goals. And then the government of Canada through the SDG unit is continuing to do some good work. And there is a strategy, but I'll just say, as one Canadian and as SDSN Canada Chair, part of me would really like to see our federal government step up and be more out front on this, and more coordinated in the way that they speak about this. It's I think the work they're doing is very good, but I think that this is a time where we probably need even more leadership coming out of our federal and our provincial governments. And then the third thing I'll just say from an environmental scan point of view is I'm really kind of disappointed in this as a country. Like, if you look at how we're mapping on to the 17 SDGs and progress over time, the ones that we were good at, like education and good governance, and we continue to be really good on those. But on a lot of the others, in particular on the environmental front, like on the climate change file, and even on sustainable communities, Canada's got a housing crisis, a housing affordability crisis. I can't help but feel as a country that we're not maybe moving as fast forward as many of us had hoped when the 2015 SDG sort of time period sort of launched. So those are some sort of general reflections maybe, and those are just my personal thoughts, and I'm sure you all have your own about these bigger issues. I did want to highlight, though, for you something which you probably are aware of to some extent, because John does a pretty good job at communicating, but we did have our big Together Ensemble 2022 conference supported by the SDG unit in Ottawa. And it was in March of this year. We had 700 attendees. It was completely virtual. And there's a report that's just about to come out. It's really quite a lovely report. And it was really, I think, a mobilizing assembly. There was big themes being talked about: intersectionality, transformation, justice. Really, really fascinating. And I got to participate in one of the panels that was really fun. It was a 50-year retrospective on the environmental movement in Canada. We had Elizabeth May from the Green Party talking about how she had seen things evolve over time. And of course, there were others as well. There's also really good work going on the SDGs localization community of practice with the Tamarack Institute. And there's monthly webinars, and there's almost 200 members have signed up. And this is really exciting. And, John and I often discuss, what should the role of SDSN Canada be? Should we be a storyteller? Should we be an animator, a catalyzer? Should we be a doer? And all of these roles, I think, are possible, but you have to sort of choose. And it's really nice to see how the localization thing really is a partnership with a whole lot of organizations, and it's got lots of buy-on with municipalities. There's also the SDG Teaching Community of Practice, and having a presentation today on teaching, I think is really important. There's the SDSN Youth Campus SDGs hubs, and we have 16 campus hubs in 21 and 22, and they're bringing SDGs to the student body, and that's, again, really quite exciting. There's a post-secondary guide for reporting on the SDGs forthcoming in July, August, and it's currently gathering best practice from around the world. And then we're finishing the World's Future SDGs simulation pilot this past in a little while, and 10 campuses participated in that. And then there's one more item which Bruce may want to give us an update on, and that is working on the SDGs Cities Index for the country of Canada. So there's been lots of things going on, and I know John's putting some things in the chat. And I mean, I think one of the areas that we're going to have to figure out as a network is what support we need from each other, what support we can give to each other, and what we can do together that can't be done alone. And I think it's exciting time. The momentum, I think, continues to build, and I know we've got some chats coming in about people's dreams and so forth. So I'm happy to just sort of catching up on those. So I'll sort of end my remarks there, John, and go back to you, and we can look at some of the commentary that's coming in, or keep going as you choose.
Yeah, why don't we could go right to Bruce, and then we'll have a few minutes afterwards if anybody wants to ask a question. Oh, my son is awake now, so if anybody wants to ask a question or any discussion, feel free to jump in. But Bruce, why don't over to you?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, John. Yeah, and nice to be here. And I just wanted to take a minute to introduce myself, just give you a bit of context as to who I am. I was born in and grew up in Southern Africa, and have spent most of my working life in international development, largely in Africa, but in other parts of the global South. My own work is in food security, food systems, nutrition, with a focus on cities of the global South. And I'm part of a big network across the different continents, city network and university network. So that's sort of the side that I come from, and it's through that work that I actually got to be part ultimately of the SDG process, but also the SDSN. And Jean reflected a little bit on the time frame, and I was thinking about that and looking at what we've achieved and all the members, and just listening to the people in our first room, the breakout room that we had. And it's quite amazing to think that it's only 10 years ago that a group of us were sitting actually in Dakar in Senegal with a couple of people whose names you would probably know, like John MacArthur and Jeff Sachs, and talking about what role should universities play in this defining of the SDGs. And the SDSN came about through that process. And it was then the similar group that said, well, the SDGs are now in place and all ratified. Surely universities should continue to have a role. I mean, that was like 7 years ago. And then 2018, we had the first Together ensemble in Calgary, which is where Jeff rather mischievously patched in from wherever he was in the world and announced to everybody there that Waterloo was taking on the role of putting together this chapter that we now have. And that was only 3.5 years ago. So it's pretty amazing what has been achieved in a very short space of time. So sometimes one can be a bit pessimistic about where we're going from a sustainability point of view. But I really think it's good to reflect a little on where we were just a few short years ago and where we are now. And so one of the things that we're going to probably continue to do this year is focus on the teaching and the mainstreaming of SDGs into curricula. And we're going to hear more about that side of it as we go through the meeting. I think it's very important. And, we talk about SDGs in a way now that literally 2 or 3 years ago, we were not able to do on our own campus. I just speak from my own experience. So that's pretty cool. So we'll carry on with many of the initiatives that are already in place. We're going to be releasing our guide, as we call it, which is about SDG reporting for post-secondary institutions. We expect this to come out later in the summer or maybe early fall. We'll have follow-up webinars, learning throughout the year on these different aspects of reporting as outlined in the guide. So there'll be some guidance to the implementation of the guide. We're collaborating with UBC on organizing a national SDGs week on university and college campuses. This will likely happen in winter 2023. And so we'll obviously be posting updates as we go through the summer. We are hoping to bring more SDG conversations to campus through events of all sorts of different kinds of things, including teaching. A very important goal that we would like to set in terms of UW sort of leading the process is around the question of SDSN Canada's governance structure. So I'm not going to go into sort of the details of how we came to be what we are now, but I think we're at a point where our network is big, it's diverse, and we would like to find ways to try and create a structure that is more inclusive and helps us really own this network as we sort of drive it forward. So we'll be reaching out to you on that front as well. And I think that's probably all I'll have to say. That was very high level. So in essence, keep going with what we're doing. Let's be happy with what we're doing because we've achieved a lot and we're going to keep going forward and we're going to do a lot more. And as the summer progresses and we go into the fall term, we have the General Assembly, UN General Assembly going on. All of the SDG and SDSN networking is going to happen through that period, online, hybrid, as well as in person. I hope to go in person actually to New York. I'll be meeting with chairs from across the world, and we'll be able to compare notes, see where we want to go, strategize. So I think at the end of that process, I'll be able to bring perhaps some fresh perspectives and maybe some direction to how we want to handle our network as we go forward. So thank you, and pleasure to be here, and I look forward to getting to meet you all and getting to know you better as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. And Jean, thank you both. Wonder if there's any questions. I don't see any in the chat. I see some great comments. So started from Danielle from U Laval and echoed by many others, but around this idea of how do we collaborate more effectively together as institutions and move away from that competition kind of element, which I think is exactly the spirit of what we're trying to do in this network. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. Feel free to raise your hand or put in the chat. I will mention, I just did a quick count while everyone was in the breakout rooms. We have 18 different affiliations on the call today, which I think is a really great representation of, a kind of a cross section of Canadian academia and the SDGs. So wonderful to see these 18 looking for more opportunities to collaborate. I don't see any questions, so if not, we can move on, and I will introduce Amber Webb, Dr. Webb. So very excited to have Amber join us today. Dr. Amber Webb has been a professional in international education for over 15 years and serves as a managing director of the SDG Academy at SDSN. In her role, she oversees the work of the education team, leads the development of new programs and partnerships, and advances the organizational mission to increase access to quality education for sustainable development. Prior to joining SDSN, Amber directed a humanitarian organization in Iraq, assisting women and children who had been abducted by ISIS. Her other professional experience includes roles with the US government and several international organizations. She has consulted on long-term projects for the US Institute of Peace, Save the Children, and the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. She presently serves as an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland, teaching courses on education for global peace and international education policy. Amber holds a master's degree from Columbia University and a PhD from the University of Maryland. So a very warm welcome to you, Amber. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to hearing more from you, and I will put your spotlight on there, and the floor is yours.
Great. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here and great to be networking with you guys today. Let me go ahead and try to share my screen here. Oh, John, you might need to enable this for me.
Yeah, try again now. Yeah.
There we go. All right, I think we're good to go here. So yes, as John mentioned, my background is in global education, and in addition to my work at SDSN, I teach in the International Education Policy Program at the University of Maryland. So like many of you, I'm also always looking for resources to support my teaching and ways to advance research and collaboration. And hopefully I'll be able to dig into a few of those things here today. So in this brief presentation, I'm going to take you through some of the work of the SDG Academy, who we are, what we do, what are the principles of our work. And I'll begin by talking a little bit about our history, including why we were established and how that's led to a broader vision and strategy for us. All right, so the SDG Academy was founded as SDSN.edu back in 2014. This was just after SDSN was established, and I'm sure you're aware, and as Bruce mentioned already, SDSN was founded with the idea that universities would be critical to making progress towards the SDGs, giving the cutting edge knowledge and expertise coming from those institutions. So the SDG Academy, or SDSN.edu, was then established to harness that expertise and produce resources on sustainable development. The hope was to take the best knowledge from around the world and to make it freely available to people. It was this effort to try to mobilize the sort of educated and trained population that we would need to achieve the SDGs. So for several years, we were focused on building these resources, and we did it in the form of massive open online courses, or MOOCs. So back in 2014, when we were launched, this was a pretty innovative idea. MOOCs were just hitting the education scene, and we thought, what better way to scale knowledge? So years passed, and eventually we came to a point where we had a robust library of resources. So we began to think, what more can we be doing? How can we maximize the expertise that we've accumulated? So over the last few years, we've been building out our programs, and we'll be embarking on a new strategy in the coming year. And although that strategy is still coming together, I can speak a little bit about it today. But let me begin by introducing our mission and vision. So the SDG Academy is focused on building transformative education. And what we mean by that is education that transforms societies towards a common agenda. So we draw on the UNESCO definition for this, which states, transformative education involves teaching and learning geared to motivate and empower happy and healthy learners to take informed decisions and actions at the individual, community, and global levels. So essentially, we've asked ourselves, how can education shape more democratic, fair, just, and sustainable societies? That's a question that we could probably go down a rabbit hole on, especially here in a room of educators. But our frame of thinking is that education needs to reflect concepts of global citizenship, civic activism, care for our common home, and that topics like this really need to be reflected transversely across disciplines and levels of education. And to get there, we need to develop the resources, the trainings, and supports that can be shared and utilized freely and widely. So you'll see that our mission and vision really reflect that. Our intent is to build a multi-generational effort towards achieving the SDGs. And that means that our work is basically built around this continuum of education, right? So how do we integrate ESD into early childhood education all the way through lifelong learning? How do we take these concepts of care that children learn as preschoolers and transition that to understandings of human rights, social justice, and environmental conservation as adults? Moreover, how do we engage lifelong learning? So one thing that we've learned about our development agenda and our climate change goals is that circumstances are always changing. So how do we continue to upskill and educate professionals to achieve the SDGs? I can say historically, the SDG Academy has largely focused on higher education, but we're in the process of expanding our efforts. And I think you'll see that as I go through some of our programs in just a moment. But building out our work on the continuum of learning is a big goal for us. And it's an ongoing effort because we truly believe that ESD is more an orientation to learning that can and should be integrated at all levels. So, beyond addressing the full spectrum of education, we are increasingly focused on how to share knowledge openly and freely. We've always done this at the SDG Academy by putting Creative Commons on most of our materials. We also make sure that there's always a free way to access our resources. But recently we started to try to think beyond that. We want to create an alternative to the current system where knowledge really seems to get stuck behind paywalls and journal subscriptions. We want to find a way for educators to share and access knowledge more freely. So this is sort of a piece of our strategy that we're in the process of pursuing. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that we are revamping our strategy in the coming year. But right now we're in the process of creating partnerships with Creative Commons, the UN library system. We're advocating for open educational resources and open repositories. In fact, we're actually leading a session at UNESCO's Transformative Education Pre-Summit next week on this very topic. So, our hope in the long run is to build out the tech infrastructure for this type of sharing. That's a pretty big effort, but in the short term, our goal is just to be advocates of open and free education. So I hope that gives you a better idea of who we are at the SDG Academy and what we're working to achieve. These are the sort of principles and ideas that guide our work. That said, let me go a little bit deeper now into some of our programs and describe the offerings that we run. So our work at the SDG Academy takes a three-pillar approach, which includes a focus on content, pedagogy and training, and community. And all of our programs fall within these three pillars. So as mentioned earlier, content and resource development has been our bread and butter at the SDG Academy. It's what we've done since we were founded. Then a few years ago, we got into pedagogy and training, just to sort of try to start addressing more this continuum of education. And then community really refers to creating that space for sharing and collaboration. So our content work is definitely what we're best known for. For several years, we've been producing these MOOCs. Currently, we have a library of over 40 of them hosted on the edX platform. These MOOCs are full courses that reflect an entire semester of coursework, so they're quite robust. And what's unique about our MOOCs is that we pull together experts from across institutions, sectors, and fields, and we really try to make sure that we convey cutting-edge expertise, but also that knowledge is coming from a variety of regions and perspectives. So for example, we have Johan Rockström discussing the concept of planetary boundaries. Then we have Indigenous leaders in the Amazon discussing what climate change has meant there. We have the Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi discussing education for Dalit children in India. We also have Ban Ki-moon discussing global citizenship education around the world. So we really strive to capture the most insightful knowledge from academics and practitioners to move us towards achieving the SDGs and to share that knowledge widely. So here you'll see some images from several of our courses. The Age of Sustainable Development, which is taught by Jeff Sachs, is essentially our most foundational course. It spans 14 weeks and it gives a strong overview of the concepts defining the field. And it's the first course that we created, and it also sort of accompanies the book Age of Sustainable Development. Our most popular course has been Nature-Based Solutions, which was launched last year. But I'll say that my favorite course is Environmental Security and Sustaining Peace, which was created in partnership with UN Environment. I think I have enough time to show you a brief trailer of our courses. It's only about a minute long, and it'll give you a better sense of the kind of content that we've pulled together over the years. Let me see.
We, humanity, predominantly the rich, developed countries, have imposed upon ourselves nothing less than a planetary crisis. We face an unprecedented global challenge.
193 heads of state and government of the United Nations have adopted 17 sustainable development goals in the name of prosperity, people, and planet.
The world was given to us as a common home. It is a call to treat it with respect.
If there's one universal aspiration in the world, it's that every parent wants the best for their child.
I don't think advocacy can take the field. It's knowledge. It needs science.
Welcome to the course of Sustainable Ocean. I, as a physical oceanographer, will teach you how the ocean physics work.
I'm a professor in global sustainability at Stockholm University.
I'm an evolutionary biologist.
I'm a professor of
applied psychology.
So it's a dialogue between the scientist and you.
Human health is indivisible from the well-being of the planet as a whole.
People who suffer most from our unsustainable way of living are those who have no say.
It's not like women's rights are a human rights problem only.
We've begun transgressing planetary boundaries.
It's always perceived as a zero-sum power game.
We need to understand how natural resources affect political systems.
How does it relate? Why is it important?
Sustainable development is impossible without human rights for all.
These pieces are interconnected. Add your voice to the global discussion.
You can become part of the solution.
All right, so that was just sort of a taste of our content. Let me see if I can get back into this. All right. Yeah, so all of our content has been shot with documentary filmmakers, so it's quite high quality and it's really visually appealing, with the hope that we'll have, you know, strong uptake of this content around the world. So here we have a few statistics on the number of learners that we've reached. We're now over 700,000. Most are coming from edX, but we also host content on a variety of regional platforms just to try to increase access. So EDRAC is our partner in the Middle East, and Shutong X is our partner in Asia. Both have worked to translate and contextualize our content for regional audiences. In addition to our MOOCs, we also have a podcast series called The Book Club with Jeff Sachs. The book club is definitely more informal education, so it's not our typical audience of learners. But you know what happened was during the pandemic, we saw a need to expand how we think about education, and we wanted to try to do something just as enriching, but in a different format, something that wasn't just sitting behind a screen and ticking off learning objectives. And so that's really how the book club was born. The book club covers a range of topics that are these deep dives into specific human rights issues, environmental issues, et cetera. And it's more learning through conversation and dialogue. So we have a new podcast episode that drops every month, and you don't have to have read the book to learn from it and enjoy it. All right, so how can people make use of our content? So a lot of our content is licensed with Creative Commons, as I've mentioned, so you can download it and use it in different ways. From a learning standpoint, educators sometimes use our content in a flipped classroom model. They might have students take the actual MOOCs, or they might just use, you know, bits and pieces of it to stir discussion in class. All of our content can be accessed via the SDG Academy library. It's linked here, but you can also find the link on our website. In the library, it's sortable by topic, SDG, author, etc. And the content is also available on edX if you just want a kind of a quick overview of the courses and the topics that we've covered. But I definitely encourage you to explore the library if you're interested in downloading it and looking at very specific pieces of content rather than the entire course. So aside from producing our own content, we're also very interested in curating content. This area of our work is still being developed, but we hope to eventually be able to host courses produced by others, just to try to further, you know, put out that diverse array of expertise. All right, so beyond content, we have our pedagogy and training programs. This pillar of work came about because, you know, suddenly we had all these great resources and thought, you know, these could really be used to enhance degree and training programs. So we asked ourselves, how can we get better uptake of our resources among professors? How can we share our content in a more formal way beyond just our offerings on MOOC platforms? So as of 2020, we have established an online master's in sustainable development. This is, of course, an entirely online program that we run in partnership with 2 universities, but with the hopes to expand to more. Essentially, we have worked with University College in Dublin and Sunway University in Malaysia to develop programs that utilize some of our content for an online degree. The programs vary from institution to institution, but much of our content is being utilized, and we've assisted in the curriculum development for each of those programs. And, you know, really at the core of this effort is providing students a chance to gain an accredited degree related to sustainable development despite geographic or financial barriers. So no matter where you are in the world, you can earn a degree, and the price point is usually a little bit under more traditional degree programs. We've also worked to establish scholarships for students wanting to join those programs. So as mentioned, we are hoping to expand this offering. We are starting by trying to establish one program in every region of the world, and then maybe one program in every country. Although the remote aspect of this degree means students can be located anywhere, we do feel dedicated to making sure different geographic regions host an online program because they contextualize the knowledge. So the program in Malaysia takes a different perspective than the program in Europe, and this is of course very useful and relevant to students. So we provide the foundational concepts, and then schools then expand on that to contextualize the ideas. It's our hope to launch a program in Africa later this year, and hopefully somewhere in the Americas after that. Again, we are always looking for partners. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. Anyway, we are also the Secretariat to the Masters in Development Practice in Global Schools. MDP is a consortium of universities united by a shared curriculum. MDP was actually founded well before the SDG Academy, but we became the Secretariat in 2019. And this program is structured so that universities can collaborate and share on how they're teaching development practice. The content is actually similar to the online MA, but these are more traditional on-campus programs. And I know Waterloo is an MDP member and has been quite active in that network for some time. There may be some other MDP members on this call as well. Then we also have Global Schools, which represents our K-12 work. So Global Schools works to train educators around the world and to localize ESD resources. So there are a variety of lesson plans available on their website. They were developed in partnership with Harvard, and schools around the world are invited to utilize the resources and methods and adapt them to local context. So I don't know if there's any teacher training institutes on this call, but we would definitely love if you got involved with Global Schools. The work that Global Schools has been doing to integrate ESD into local and national curricula has actually spawned a new initiative called the Mission 4.7. This initiative seeks to make progress on SDG 4.7, which is the target associated with education for sustainable development. So Mission 4.7 is chaired by Audrey Ozole, the Director General of UNESCO, and the partners on this mission are a mix of policymakers and practitioners working on ESD efforts at various levels. So in terms of transforming higher education to support SDG 4.7, the mission has partnered with the International Association of Universities and the Association of Commonwealth Universities in an effort to mobilize higher education institutions. The roadmap for that is actually still being created, but we have a phenomenal group of partners committed to working on this. All right, our last pillar of work targets the development of community. So we have a community of practice at the SDG Academy that is now over 60 members. Some of you actually may already be involved with it. The community of practice is made up of academic institutions, NGOs, private businesses, with the idea that diverse collaboration will enrich the work. So we offer a webinar series with it, a student colloquium, and a space to engage. Members are encouraged to share resources, develop partnerships, and stay up to date with the SDG Academy and SDSN initiatives. I'll say the pandemic definitely slowed down some of the engagement with the community, of course, as the demands on professors increased across institutions, but we're ready to pick up speed again, and we are mobilizing for a new cohort to launch in September. If you're interested in joining, please do be in touch. You can email me directly, or there'll be an email, I think, at the end of these slides. Beyond the community of practice, we also have alumni groups associated with our degree programs, as well as our MOOC platforms. All right. Anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap it up now because I want to leave a little bit of time and space for discussion, but please contact me if you'd like to get involved with our work or if I piqued your interest in some way today. We're a small team embedded within SDSN, but we represent a huge portfolio of work. And again, we really try to take all the expertise of the SDSN and its partners, including all of you, and to turn that into educational outputs and outcomes. So that's really the heart of our work. So anyway, I look forward to hearing from you. Please do take advantage of all of the resources that I've shared today.
Thank you. Thanks, Amber. So yeah, we have a few minutes if anyone has any questions. I know that Danielle had asked in the chat about the languages for the MOOCs being translated. Amber, I know that some have different languages. I think probably specifically French is what Danielle is interested in, but other languages too.
Yeah, so language, that's been an ongoing effort for us. So, edX has been our main platform. It's where we're drawing most of our learners from. So our courses that are hosted on edX, almost all of them are in English, and several of them are translated into other languages so that basically they're subtitled, so that when you go on and you take the MOOC, they're subtitled into various languages. We've had good representation with Spanish. I think there's a few translated into French. It's a bit all over the place, the languages that are supported on the edX platform, because largely we've relied on our networks to help us do those translations. So the Barcelona or the Spain network helped with the Spanish translations, the Russian network helped with the Russian translations. And so anyway, that's why our translation initiative is kind of all over the board, because it depends on the capacity of the networks. But we do, as I mentioned, we do host on a few different regional platforms. So we host our content on EDRAC, which is based in Jordan, and then Shutong X, which is based in China. And they do translation of our courses themselves.
So Amber, if there was some interest to contribute to the translation through the SDSN Canada community, that would be an option potentially?
Oh yes, no, absolutely.
Okay.
We would very much welcome that. Yeah, in the way that it's worked with the other networks is that professors have mobilized their students. So I think, can't remember, is the Spanish network or the Russian network. Anyway, a professor mobilized students to have the students help support the translations. And it was really healthy for students because they had to learn the content as they were doing it, right? So they learn the content, they provide us the translations, and everyone wins.
Yeah, great. I see, Bruce, you have your hand up, so I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Amber. I think reflecting on what I see in the comments and what I saw in your presentation, wow, that's amazing. Think of how we try to put together a global health online course for the MDP some years ago, and we struggled for years, literally, and never quite got it right. And then you look at what the SDG Academy has today, it's absolutely amazing. My question is related to these online master's programs, and in our case, the Americas discussion that you referenced. Do you have universities that you're already working with on this as yet?
We've had universities that we've had conversations with. So, we are moving forward in Africa with at least one school, maybe two schools. So that's coming together. The Americas is very early stage. A couple of universities based in the US. I don't know, it's been really challenging in the US because there's a lot of restrictions with accreditation boards, et cetera. So anyway, that's why the Americas is sort of a 2-year goal, just because we need to find the right partner still, and then give time to get through all of the hurdles.
Okay, yeah, we have the same hurdles in Canada, I guess, to some degree. All right, yeah, I'd like to have a conversation with you about that, if we may do that. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Yeah, the online masters, it's something that I can give a little bit more background about it. It's something that we've talked about doing at SDSN for a very long time. This idea came out, I don't know, maybe 2017 or 2018. And it was, hard to sort of pick up steam and put it together, but then the pandemic hit in 2020 and there was massive interest in getting online programs together. So that's how we were able to launch our first 2 programs. Both of them launched midway through the pandemic, essentially. And, the programs are really interesting because and it's probably similar to MDP, but basically the schools work with us to figure out exactly what that program should look like at their school. So it's a master's in sustainable development, but the Sunway University one is very focused on management. And so it's a master's in sustainable development and management. Whereas some of the schools that we've talked to have, a very, very much an economics focus. Or human rights focus. And so, the programs can look different from each school, but basically we're helping to develop the curriculum. And then we're also filling the gaps in knowledge, right? So, we have this huge library of resources. We cover all topics across the SDGs. And so, as these programs come together, if there's gaps in faculty at institutions, we can help to fill that.
Okay, that's great, thanks. Yeah, so at a future date, with John's help, let's connect and just have a discussion. I'd like to learn more about it and share some ideas that are floating around in my head. So thank you.
That'd be great.
Great. Thanks, Bruce. And we will go last question to Asaf. I will just bring you onto the spotlight. Go ahead.
Amber, thanks for a wonderful presentation. I was just thinking, I think along the lines of the previous questions in terms of how I could merge this with my master's in sustainability studies. And I think a point of least resistance in terms of accreditation is starting with colloquia, especially student colloquia, because what I'm most keen on is having my students understand the various contexts and changing contexts of sustainability in relation to other countries, other universities, and really those communities, they learn from each other 10 times more than they do from sit at the feet of scholars. And I think that's one of the things that needs to be driven very firmly in a pedagogy around sustainability is we can't teach the old ways. So rather than striving to replace, I'd love to work with you in terms of fitting in pieces of the academy and letting each student basically have their own configuration and maybe building a model that other universities in Canada can benefit from, because I think that would be a huge source of value to sustainability studies program that I could even take outside of my program and begin widening the engagement in interdisciplinary PhD programs, interdisciplinary, even fourth year undergrads, because that's where my pain point is. How do I tease them enough to go into a graduate program and really make change through SDGs?
Great. Yes, let me just drop my email in the chat here for you. Yeah, we're working on building out offerings for students. You mentioned student colloquia. In our community of practice, we've actually built in a student colloquium series. So yes, I definitely am in agreement with you on all of those points. Yeah, my email is there, so reach out.
Thank you. Oh, you're on mute, Asaf.
Sorry, just thank you so much and great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. It was, I'll just remove that spotlight. Fantastic presentation. Lots of really great comments in the chat about your work, SDG Academy's work. I've always been very impressed by the work since joining the SDSN community in 2018. It's a great resource, I think, for us across the country as a community, as a network. So thank you very much for sharing about it, and look forward to keeping you engaged in Canada and you know, having the membership also engage globally on some of the work that you're doing. Really interested also in this curated content. I think that, you know, as that comes together, keep us in mind, and we'd love to kind of see what the Canadian chapter can contribute.
Great, thank you, everyone.
So we're going to move on now to our kind of last element of the of our meeting today, and it's just going to be a bit of a lightning round of member initiatives, just to help inspire and hear a little bit about what's happening around the country. And so we'll have 4 speakers. They'll each speak for 3 minutes. A quick snapshot on SDG activities. And, you know, as we mentioned last year, and we continue to try and build further, is to profile each of you as members and the work that you're doing. And so we have a great initiative, a social media initiative called Member Mondays. I'll share the link in the chat in one moment. And it's basically just a Google Doc. You can submit to us an initiative you'd like us to help profile, and that just helps kind of bring it to the broader SDS or SDG community in Canada. So part of our work, we want to spotlight, we want to share great work happening. So today we'll hear from 4, but there's many more on the call, and so I encourage you to consider contributing to the Member Mondays initiative. So the 4 that we have for today, our speakers are John Helliker. He's the Dean of Innovation and Engagement at Sheridan College. We have Shamta Hunter, the Manager of Sustainability Student Engagement at the University of British Columbia. Jason Enns, the Executive Director of Academic Policy Planning and Strategic Initiatives at Concordia University. And Nicole Arsenault, the Program Director for Sustainability at York University. So I'm going to invite John to kick things off for us. And let me just find you here so I can pin you. Yes, okay, great. Go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you, John. Thanks for the opportunity and really nice to have everybody on the Zoom call today. I'll just do a brief review of our last couple of years, and this coincides actually with us joining SDSN Canada, which has been extremely important for us in terms of the work that we're doing within the sustainability area. So we had a strategic plan in late 2019 that did not mention the SDGs, but in its vision and its wording brought up the SDGs for a lot of people around the campus. And it talked about empowering learners to shape an ever-changing world, addressing the world's toughest problems. So from this, we started to develop a small group of people who are interested in the SDGs. We have a strong background in sustainability through our Office for Sustainability, but that's in the finance and admin area. And they just started on SDGs. And we also have a strong focus in our faculties in community well-being, social impact, as well as a focus on the sustainability from a social and engineering and applied computing. So a range of approaches, but really not with a focus on it from an SDG standpoint. And a lot of people not using the word sustainability in the work that they did, even though they were actually engaged in it. So over the last couple of years, after joining SDSN, we've been moving forward with engagement with the SDGs, and we've been supported in that by our engagement on a committee. A number of us, our president, as well as myself and a couple of other individuals, are engaged in different committees with Colleges and Institutes Canada that deal with sustainability, and also our involvement in SDSN through different initiatives and webinars that have been put on have really helped to support what we're doing. And what we've also done over the last 2 years is taken a top-down, bottom-up approach. So from the bottom-up perspective, we formed an informal, we started an informal committee dealing with the SDGs of individuals across the divisions that were interested in the SDGs. And last year, we put forward a proposal to the institution that they integrate sustainability within institutional planning. So for the first time this year, the commitment to SDGs and sustainability has been integrated into institutional planning. And there's now a multi-year commitment to having faculty and staff work on initiatives that pilot and also look at systemic change that's required in order to integrate sustainability. And in this work, as we've moved forward, we've also started to look at this based on two foundations, looking at it from the standpoint of multiple worldviews, but specifically the SDGs and Western approach to sustainability and Indigenous worldviews and ways of knowing and doing. I'm a settler myself. I've been working with the Center for Indigenous Learning and Support, as well as internal and external Indigenous and settler collaborators. And we're really looking at this from a place-based and relationship standpoint. So a major approach to that right now is a project that we've started with, we started being engaged in with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. All of Sheridan's lands reside on traditional and treaty lands of the Mississaugas. So that's a sort of a general scoping of what we do. I'd love to be engaged with or get engaged with anybody who's interested in any of these areas for further conversation or collaboration.
Thank you, John. Great work. Really inspiring at Sheridan. Thank you for sharing. And apologies for these 3 minutes is unfair, but it's meant to be just a quick something that to share a little bit. So thanks, John, for that. I will invite now Shamta Hunter from UBC to have the floor.
Thanks, John. Yeah, totally unfair, 3 minutes. But I would quickly share my screen because I think I can give you a better understanding of what we are doing here by showing you here. So we are, John asked me to present this because we are doing, trying to launch a new engagement program for students at UBC. We've been running a Sustainability Ambassadors leadership program at UBC for the last 10 years. High engagement, we have heard a lot from students in terms of engaging. We get hundreds of applications and we can only accept about 25. And that's because the way the program is set up right now. So we are trying to change the model to include more students. We've been doing a lot of landscape analysis in terms of what students want. We have looked at other peer institutions in terms of what's going on in other campuses around SDGs and climate action. And we've been hearing a lot of things from students. Two things that I will mention here is one, students are wanting a diversity of engagement activities. So from mid to low commitment to high commitment opportunities. The ambassadors program that we run right now, it's about 6 to 7 hours of commitment per week. It's all volunteer. What else we are hearing from students is that they want compensation for this kind of work. They've been putting a lot of effort, a lot of hours into this sustainability work on our campus. They want some kind of recognition or compensation for the work that they are doing. So what we are trying to do is take the program that we have existing, it's called Sustainability Ambassadors Leadership Program, and try and expand its capacity. So for the pilot program, we're still wanting to keep the 4 pillars that have been really successful over the last 10 years. Education is a key component of this. So we have a year-long curriculum that is part of this leadership program that I'm happy to talk to if you're interested in that. There's a mentorship aspect to it, experiential learning through project-based work, and then multidisciplinary network. And so what we are doing is a campus-wide program. What we are wanting to do is make teams that are truly multidisciplinary. And one of the key things that we hear from graduating students is that this is one of the key things that they're taking away. They're working with teams of students from different disciplines that they don't really necessarily get a chance to do in their own coursework or other parts of university life. So what we are hoping to do is create a new program. We are calling it the Catalyst program. It hasn't been launched yet, so don't share it beyond yourselves. It's going to be coming out pretty soon. We are trying to do a 3-stream approach, engage, amplify, and lead. So students will enter into the engage stream, low commitment opportunities, go at your own pace, choose your own adventure kind of deal. Amplify is where they kind of build their leadership capacities, and lead is where they're actually advancing their leadership capabilities. So here is a sort of a version that we are going to be trying for a pilot year. We are using the 5 key themes, as you will see in this first year, the lead stream. And these 5 key themes we are borrowing from our own strategic plan that we just launched earlier this year. So those are the 5 themes that will be working, and we are prioritizing for the next 2 years or 3 years. And the first stream is a paid compensated stream. So we were able to secure some funding from the Climate Emergency Fund that UBC declared in late 2019. So we have that paid stream of students up in this stream. And each of these leaders will be helping us develop that curriculum. So we'll take the curriculum that we have existing from the leadership program, and each of them will define their own curriculum for the ambassadors stream in September through that lens of that own theme.
Just to wrap up, Shamta, sorry to cut in, just to wrap up, please.
Sorry, okay, just quickly. This stream, the ambassador stream, we are trying to see if we can do credit-based approach here, and we are working on that. This is based in the competencies, so sustainability competencies approach. I don't know if you've known about that. So this is the framework that we are using. And I just quickly wanted to show you a theme in terms of how these 5 themes connect to the SDGs, and we are trying to focus on all of them through each of the themes. So if you will see, how climate cohort will connect to some of the focused SDGs that we are working on for the pilot year. Of course, they all integrate together, but I know that's a lot to share in 3 minutes. So sorry about that. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Well, we will share the recording afterwards, and I'll make sure that everybody who's presenting has their email included in the notes follow up as well. So if you have questions that you want to kind of follow up on. Next, I'd like to thank you, Shamta, by the way. I'd like to invite Jason Enns from Concordia to share as well now. And please go ahead, Jason.
All right, thanks, John, and thanks, everyone. I'll try to be very brief. So I'm reporting back on Concordia's 17 rooms process. This is a format some of you are familiar with, initiated by the Brookings Institution and the Rockefeller Foundation. In short, it is a process where there are conversations, structured conversations convened around each of the 17 SDGs with a kind of, with the goal of identifying kind of what some kind of mid-level aspirations are around that SDG, that the people convene in this conversation, work on together. So we're running that at our institution, and it's really a consultative part of our process of developing an institutional strategy around SDG engagement. So you can run this process in various ways, and the way that we chose to do it is have once a week sessions as opposed to doing it all at once, all in the same day or all in the same week, just to give ourselves more runway to prepare for each session and pull together the right group of people. We ran 2-hour sessions, faculty, staff, and students, with focusing on 3 main components in our kind of standard script, which is reviewing with people what's already happening on campus around that SDG. I'm asking people to engage with the targets articulated for that particular SDG to determine which of them are most relevant to universities, so that our university has the most to contribute to, and then to do some open brainstorming about what might we do as an institution and as a group here collected together to have more impact around that particular SDG. It could be a really open-ended kind of conversation. So we had a really highly engaged group of people that participated over the course of the semester. And now, of course, we have to aggregate and curate and filter and prioritize all the outcomes. But it's been a really kind of grassroots, open conversation about thinking about what we as an institution can do to be more engaged and more impactful with respect to the SDG framework. And I'll just note, for those of you who are not part of it already, that the Brookings Institution runs a community of practice around universities running 17 rooms processes, if you'd like to join and learn more and hear about how other institutions have structured their processes.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. And over to you, Nicole Arsenault from York University.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm pleased to share some of the amazing stuff that we are doing at York. I'm happy to say that York has really embraced the SDGs, and it's really exciting to see the uptake. Some healthy competition has certainly helped to move the needle at York. So one of the things is we've embedded the SDGs within our university academic plan, along with 6 priorities for action, which are all interconnected with the SDGs. And this is from a global, local, and a campus perspective. Going back, we've done a number of things over the last couple of years. One is our CFAL Center. We also created a student SDG hub. And then this past year, through one of our Prostial fellows, Cheryl Van Dalen Smith, had been leading efforts around how do we start really embedding SDGs within curriculum. We did a teach-in day back in May. I'm losing track of my days, the beginning of May. And actually some of our colleagues are on the call today. So kudos to Nidima and Tracy and Sandra, who were really a big part of making this day happen. The day was filled with people from York, but it was also international. We had a number of people from across Canada, as well as outside of Canada, participate in this day. We also are developing a community of practice on how do we start, really embedding SDGs within curriculum at York. We did this session with one of those. The name is slipping me on what they do, but it's one of those facilitated sessions where the person's drawing as we're going through the session. I can't really zoom in because this is an image in Zoom, but some really cool interactive pieces as part of this this drawing that has provided us with a lot of ideas to how to move things forward in the future. And then I'm also really happy to say, and again, kudos to Tracy and Nidima who are on the call, is we've just developed a website. They put together a toolkit for how to embed the SDGs in the classroom. It is open source, so I'll put the link in the chat. And this is like literally fresh off the press because it just went live this week. So really proud to say some of our colleagues have put a lot of work in putting this together. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is capstones. So we have a York Capstone Network, as well as a cross campus, it's called C4 Cross Campus Capstone Classroom, which it's an interdisciplinary classroom, and everything is focused around the SDGs. So all the capstone projects all are based around how to solve, problems or challenges that are SDGs related. So we just had the capstone day, and it was really, really inspiring to see all these students coming up with all these amazing ideas on how to solve these challenges. So really happy to see really things progress from that perspective. And then last but not least, our University Academic Innovation Fund, I think 99% of the projects all related to the SDGs, and really happy to see all the big major projects are all SDG related. And actually one of them is about continue to advance the SDGs within curriculum. So that's about it from my end. Yeah, we're quite excited to see all the enthusiasm at York of embedding the SDGs across the institution.
Thank you, Nicole. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. We've tried to pack in a lot. I hope it felt like an hour and a half just flew by for everyone. I know that can always be a challenge on Zoom, but so we will follow up with the recording and notes and emails and contacts. And all the links in the chat. So look for that. I think a few points just to kind of put out in terms of coming next from us as a secretariat. The teaching community initiative that Bruce had mentioned, we're basically having regular online conversations around teaching resources, approaches. Nicole, I think there's going to be lots of great collaborative opportunity here between what's going on at York and what we're trying to do with the community as well. Reflections on our governance structure. Bruce also mentioned it. We are looking at finding ways to bring members onto our governance board so that we can have a more inclusive strategic planning approach for how we decide on what initiatives to pursue in areas and themes. So we will share a terms of reference later this summer, and for those that are interested to participate, then that would be fantastic. So there'll be more info coming shortly. And then also, as was alluded, and we've been talking with Shamta UBC, the SDG week, and it's still kind of in a nascent stage, but we're looking at really creating a coordinated effort on our campuses across Canada, likely in the winter term, around an SDG week, where we accelerate teaching, awareness, events, whatever it might be, and kind of having a bit of a big splash. And there are initiatives like that that we want to tie into as well. So more to come there. We'd love to have a great participation across the network. We're a few minutes over, so I'll now just say thank you so much for joining today. And we continue to see the network grow, and inspired by a lot of the action that's happening across Canada. And we've heard just a small slice of that. And so we're looking forward to continuing to push the SDGs forward in Canada, advocate and see them grow on our campuses and in our government. And I think there's a lot of change that we can create as we collaborate together and find those opportunities for that collaboration. So thank you for all your work, everyone, and thanks for joining today. And with that, we'll sign off. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.